Thank you. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Wassalatu wassalam ala sayyid al-anbiya wa mursalin wa akhlihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Amma ba'd. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Thank you for your attention. I'm going to focus on tafsir as theology. And that doesn't only count for kalamic tafsir, it also counts for non-kalamic tafsir. Because from my point of view, Quranic exegesis tafsir mainly played, next to theological tracts themselves, a central role in propagating the theologies of different schools of thought. The Khawarij, the Mu'tazila, the Sunni orthodoxy, the different sects among the Shia, and other schools and sects all had generated exegetical works to promote and establish the premises and main foundations of their theologies. It's also interesting that from a lot of early sects, we mainly or have a theological tract or a partial tafsir that remains of them. With the start of the classical period, there not only emerged multiple tafsir works which provide commentary on almost all verses in the Quran, but also encyclopedic works, the Mutawalad al-Tafsir, the lengthy exegesis, which coincide with the formative and classical phase, which is in a sense also seen as the recording phase, where new tafsir is generated and previous tafsir is worked into that in the later tafsir. And they gathered as many and as diverse exegetical commentaries as possible. Although the gathered materials was clearly selected by applying preference, it also included the opinions or traditions from what were deemed rival or heretical schools. These were included partially to refute them, many times also as a citation of an acceptable opinion, or to reframe them in service of another theological construct. In the post-classical period, we also see the emergence of smaller works, which generally summarize the most accepted exegetical positions of the formative and classical period, the so-called mukhtasarat, the summary works, which shows a crystallization of the tafsir genre. The most famous work of this type is what today has been mentioned many times, is the work by Baidawi, 12th century scholar, which also became the most popular subject of another post-classical trend, the super commentaries, the Shuru and the Hawashi. These super commentaries added to popular exegetical texts full explanations, as was done with Baidawi, but also refutations, as was done with Zamakhshari. Others use these texts also as headers for their own legal or theological discourse, which I will show later on. In the post-classical period and after, Sunni exegesis is dominated by the Ash'ari and Maturidi, whereby they generally focus on the Mu'tazila as the theological other. But the tafsir tradition also became a repository for theological positions, which are generally not discussed in official theological tracts. It therefore not only reflects known theological trends, but is also an important source for disclosing trends, influences, and personal opinions, which are not apparent in other genres. Understanding the Ottoman tafsir tradition would therefore imply one also understands the Ottoman theological tradition, which is a theme we will explore in this paper. One of the theses proposed herein is that the Ottoman tafsir tradition developed parallel to the rise of the Ottoman ikhtilaf literature on Ash'ari and Maturidi differences and functioned as a synthesis between the dominant Mu'tazila and Ash'ari exegesis. The main differences between the Maturidi and Ash'ari were, according to some, as low as 5 or high as 50 by others, depending on what one counts as a school-defining heuristic. But two of the central defining differences revolved around rational knowledge and how this relates to the nature of God. An important example is the discussion on Quran 17:15, "We do not punish until we send a messenger," which surrounds rational responsibility, taklif, which shows how the Maturidi not simply developed a middle path between the Ash'ari and Mu'tazila, but adhered to a certain theological tradition as a teaching of Abu Hanifa himself, the founder of the Hanafi. The founder of the Hanafi Kalamic school, Abu Mansur al-Maturidi, explains that the messenger in 1715 is preceded by human reason. He says, and in the verse is proof that monotheism, tawheed, is required for them by reason, bil aql, If it was not required, then when messengers are sent to call them towards Tawheed, they would say, "Who are you? Who sent you to us?" But God, from his grace, wanted to remove doubts from them and eliminate any excuse by sending them a messenger. For there are three causes of knowledge, the asbab al-ilm. One, what they learn through the apparent senses together with intuition. Second, and some also add understanding through contemplation and reflection, while others do not learn except through revealed teaching and warnings. So here we also see that Maturidi had a stepped an anthropology where there are three different types of humans and how they understand, how they receive knowledge. As the Mu'tazila connected an almost similar approach to this verse, it became a central polemic concern for Ash'ari exegetes, such as Badawi, who emphasized that the literal import of the verse mitigates any claim for rational responsibility or obligation apart from revelation. The 18th century Ottoman exegete Isam al-Din al-Qunawi, in his extensive Hashiyah on Badawi, confronts this refutation head-on. He says, and he cites Badawi in the beginning, and al-Badawi says, and in it is the proof that there is no obligation before the revelation of the divine law, meaning there is no obligation on the responsible person, the mukallaf, before the divine law is cognitively related to him. Because if reason obligates, it is required that when he leaves the obligation unfulfilled, he is liable for divine punishment. But the Exalted clearly states that, and we do not punish until we send a messenger, which nullifies any required punishment. And al-Baidawi's intent here is to refute the scholars of the Maturidi and to slander the Mu'tazila. So for Qunawi, in a sense, he not only sees Badawi responding to the Mu'tazila, he also feels that that Badawi is also responding to the Maturidi. Why? Because the Maturidi and the Mu'tazila state that reason rules by obligation over all matters, and from this statement they establish that good and evil are known by reason. But our scholars, the Maturidi, follow the opinion that good and evil are known by reason as established by the Most Wise, which is God the Exalted, and that similar matters, such as belief in the Prophet, peace be upon him, are divinely imposed by the divine law. They are tawqifi. And when something is not imposed by the divine law, it is obligated by reason, when it falls under rationally known ethics. Therefore, the messenger in this Quran verse is universal, meaning reason. And this is the opinion of Imam Abu Hanifa, in that anyone to whom revelation has not reached, and he does not believe in the existence of God and his oneness, then that person will be in the hellfire forever, as this is a fact known by reason. And another verse which became connected to the discussion surrounding taklif, rational responsibility, is Quran 11, verse 117. And your Lord does not destroy the communities because of wrongdoing, while its people are right-doers, which is concerned with the cause for divine worldly punishment. Does this verse simply deny that God is unjust in his punishment, or does it also deny that God punished civilizations simply because they were infidels? In a sense, what triggers divine worldly punishment? And how did the Ottoman tafsir tradition engage the different exegetical approaches to this verse? And in what function had Maturidi theology within its development? To understand these discussions, we need first to explore how taklif, rational obligation, taklif akli, and the relation between faith and ethics, between iman and amal, developed within Islamic theology. The questions surrounding belief and works revolved around three main issues. Can humans rationally know God exists? Can humans rationally know God and ethics? How are belief and ethics connected? And when does responsibility, taklif, sets in? This is a table, we're not going to discuss it fully, but what I've done here on the left is provide the main schools, the Murji'a, the Maturidi, the Ash'ari, the Athari, the Mu'tazila, and the Khawarij. And there are different positions when it comes to how people attain faith, if faith and works are connected or not, how people lose faith, how ethics is grounded, when humans are punished on earth, when humans are punished in the hereafter, and and with these different positions, one of the main things when I started to try to catalog all these differences is that one of the major things that define the Sunni, most importantly, is that for the Sunni, that faith and works are technically not collapsed into one another. This had major effects. The majority among the Sunni theologians state that people who died before any prophet or revelation reached them fully, that Bulugh al-Dawah has not been attained, to have died on their primordial nature, on their fitra, and are deemed the people of the interval, the Ahl Fatra, who are not fully responsible for their faith and deeds. The Maturidi, who similar to the Mu'tazila held the opinion that people can know through reason that God exists, and are therefore obliged to inquire about the origins of existence and basic ethics within their mental capabilities. The Maturidi therefore adhere to ethical objectivism and hold people responsible for their general beliefs and works apart from revelation, taklif akli. It is because of this that the Maturidi shared overlapping discourses and concerns with the Mu'tazila and took a middle path between the latter and the Ash'ari. The general position among the early Ash'ari is that reason can only provide possible knowledge about God and ethics. Therefore, worldly and eschatological obligation is only acquired through revelation. The main Ash'ari position is an adherence to ethical voluntarism. The later, post-11th century Ash'ari have a more nuanced position, wherein they accept rational ethics, placing worldly ethical obligation on all humans, but retaining the position that responsibility in the hereafter is only attained through revelation. But these opinions, first of all, center around responsibility in relation to judgment in the hereafter. How is one judged on earth? Here the question on the relation between faith and works come into play. Can one be a wrongdoer in relation to God, an unbeliever, and at the same time be a right doer in relation to other humans? It is this latter question which became a central topic in Sunni theology as a response to the Khawarij and Mu'tazila, whereby the Sunni Orthodox rejected the concept that faith, as it located in the heart, can be annihilated by works. So a believer in God who behaves unethically, because of his works, because of his behavior, can he become an unbeliever? The Mu'tazila adhere to the idea of universal rational knowledge, just as the Maturidi, when it comes to belief in ethics. But because they emphasized monotheism and the collapse of faith and works, it also meant a collapse of worldly and eschatological punishment. Both for the Khawarij and the Mu'tazila, unbelief was the main cause of divine wrath, both in the hereafter and here on earth. For the group which became known as the people of the prophetic tradition and community, the Ahl Sunnah wal Jama', the Sunni Orthodox, encompassing Maturidi, Ash'ari, and moderate Afariya, a separation between faith, iman, and works, amal, was upheld. It is this separation which also affects their understanding if unbelievers, despite of their unbelief, can perform ethical works. If faith is not affected by works, then works are not affected by faith, thereby also possibly separating worldly and eschatological punishment. Confronted with the belief in rational ethics, access to ethics, and that some groups follow earlier revealed religions, Islamic philosophy of law, especially among the Hanafi, developed the hypothetical question pertaining to the rulings of things before the advent of revelation, the ahkam al-ashiyya qabla maji al-sama. To discuss the minimal ethical and legal responsibilities Muslims can expect from non-Muslims when it comes to treaties, trade, and social cohesion and the rule of law. The Hanafi scholar, the 12th century Hanafi scholar Al-Amishi discusses if non-Muslims are responsible after receiving the call of the Prophet, so Bulugh al-Dawah is fulfilled, if they are responsible for the specific rulings of the Sharia or only the general rulings. And after this discussion, he states, the non-Muslims are addressed in the inviolable matters, the hurumat, and social affairs, the mu'amalat, apart from the matters of worship, the ibadat, because the people of worship are the believers, apart from the unbelievers. As for the unbelievers, they are people with legal capacity, they're akhlun, akhliya, in upholding and receiving the permanent inviolability, li thubut al-hulma, in rights, in haq, and the mu'amalat, in social affairs. So we see here that non-Muslims are in this world accountable for their ethical works, but their failure to fulfill the obligation of worship will be dealt with in the hereafter, because they do not fulfill the ibadat. This shows that the separation of faith and works was also applied to non-Muslims and has implications not only for the time after the sending of the Prophet Muhammad, but also raises questions on the times before it. Did God destroy the people mentioned in the Qisas al-Anbiya for their kufr and for their shirk, or only for their zulm, their injustice towards other humans? Our question, in a sense, is what type of human anthropology and behavior causes divine worldly punishment? The punishment narratives are generally understood to provide an exposition of God's response to unbelief. This assumption is logical, as according to the Quran, the main shared message between all these prophets is that they proclaimed Tawheed, monotheism, and that God only punishes after sending a messenger. A similar stance is discernible among many early exegetes of the Quran, especially at key verses discussing the punishment narratives. An example of early exegesis on verse 1117 is that by the early 8th century exegete Muqatil ibn Suleiman, he says on this verse, and God does not destroy, meaning punish the communities in this world, unjustly, bizulm, meaning he would not destroy them without any sin. Meaning the communities which God the Exalted has mentioned in this chapter, Surah Al-Hud, which God has punished, and they were the people of Noah, the people of Ad, Thamud, the people of Abraham, the people of Lot, the people of Shu'ab. And then he says, people who are right doers, meaning believers. He's saying then, if they were believers, they would not have been destroyed. This proposed interpretation is clear. God does not destroy them without them having performed any sin, which includes their unbelief. Similar exegesis is proposed by early scholars, especially among the Mu'tazila. God being transcendent of any injustice, because he doesn't punish without a reason, is a central position in Islamic thought and emphasized multiple times in the Quran itself. And so the destruction is brought upon by the people themselves due to their own sins, as they have done injustice to themselves. Zalamu anfusahum. And with each prophetic tale, apart from the shirk and rejection of the messenger, of their kufr, ethical violations are mentioned, such as the oppression and persecution of the people of Israel by Pharaoh, and the killing of the camel by the Thamud, and the violation of rights by the Ad. So the question then is, do all three violations, so the idea of shirk, kufr, the rejection of the messengers, and ethical violations, need to be present in the people for them to be punished on earth? And if not, which violation or combination of violations triggers divine wrath on earth and which are given respite? The Quran itself mentions idolatry, shirk, murder, and adultery as belonging to the major sins deserving punishment in the hereafter, and singles out idolatry as the only unforgivable sin. But there are multiple verses mentioning divine respite, imhal, until the day of judgment, and God desiring religious pluralism on earth. As is stated in Quran 11, verse 57, human unbelief cannot hurt God, and multiple verses emphasize that God is self-sufficient and free from want. He's al-Ghani, and he's therefore in no need of his creation. Within Quranic theology, it would therefore create an incoherence if shirk and kufr by itself are the main causes of divine worldly punishment. Non-Muslims were accepted as citizens within the Islamic Empire and were deemed as communities with rights. These communities were clearly exposed to the message of Islam and thereby fulfilling the requirement of Bulugh al-Dawah. And several of them had made treaties with Muhammad himself. So shirk and kufr were not only tolerated, their existence was divinely mandated and protected. And it is this interpretation which is slowly adopted in the exegesis on verses such as 1117. And this can be seen early on in the exegesis of 1117 with the 9th century grammarian scholar Zayd al-Farah. So he responds also to verse 1117. And he says, it is saying, Yakulu, it is not that he destroys them while they are right doers, because that would be unjust. And it could also be saying, it is not that he destroys them while they give others the right in what is between them, while they are mushrikeen and practice the wrongdoing of idolatry. Here, El-Farra begins with a similar interpretation as provided by Muqatil and others by emphasizing God's transcendence over injustice. He says he would not destroy them if they were muslihun, they were right-doers, because that would be unjust. But El-Farra also introduces here another interpretation, which shifts the agent of the injustice or the wrongdoing, the zulm, to the people of the communities. This shift has major implications for the overall meaning of the verse and for the possible theology presented by it. In this interpretation, God will not destroy the people of the communities for their shirk, and he will not destroy them as long as they uphold justice between them and others. In this...
There are 2 minutes. In your list, there are lots of names, like Ebu Suud Effendi, Ismail Hakkı.
I'm getting to them.
Within 5 minutes.
Okay. In this scheme, violations in faith are given divine respite, imhal, but violations in ethics are not. He thereby acknowledges that non-Muslims, even mushrikeen, can know and uphold ethics in a satisfactory way, despite their kufr. Al-Farra is the earliest exegete I could find which provide this interpretation, and is also one of the earliest exegetes adhering to the positions for which the later Sunni Orthodox became known. But we see also this interpretation with the early Hanafi scholar Abu Layth al-Samarkandi, where he also emphasizes that, where he says, and God said, and he will not destroy the communities because of zulm, because of wrongdoing. He is saying, your Lord does not punish the people of the communities. Bi-zulm means without any crime. Wa akhlahu muslihuna means obedient monotheist. So again here, Samarkandi begins with the idea of that being muslihuna means being believers. But then Samarkandi shifts the interpretation like Farra did. Because then he refers to, and it's related from Ibn Abbas, saying God doesn't destroy people except by their acts, bi-amalihim. So he already separates the idea that they could be punished for their shirk or kufr. And he does not destroy them because of their shirk, meaning he does not destroy them because of their idolatry, while they are right-doers and do not wrong to others. Because shirk is compensated in the hellfire and nowhere else. God only destroys them because of their transgressions added ziyada to their shirk, such as with the people of Salah, and then he goes on. So when we look at this Quran verse 1117, it became a marker of a certain switch in theology that developed within Sunni theology. There are multiple verses using derivatives of halakha to destroy, zalama to be unjust, or dhanaba to sin in relation to the qasas al-anbiya. But it's only 1117 where halakha is combined with zalama and salaha to do right. It's only in this verse directly combining divine worldly punishment with ethics in such a way whereby the unbelievers can be understood to not only being destroyed because they did wrong, but also as not being destroyed because they did right. And it's this element which became central in Sunni exegesis. So we can therefore discern 2 main approaches to the Quran verse. One I called reading A, the other reading B. In reading A is the interpretation we started with. God does not punish unjustly, bi-zulm, people who are correct in their faith, nor is his punishment towards unbelievers unjust as they have called it upon themselves. So the reading A mainly defends God as not being unjust. But then also we see with Al-Farra and with Samarkandi that also another interpretation was emerging. And that's reading B. God doesn't punish people for their theological injustice, for their zulm of shirk or unbelief, if they are people who perform ethical goodness and are therefore not unjust towards others. This Quran verse therefore lies at the center of 2 different theologies, each with their own anthropologies, as theology and anthropology are unmistakably intertwined. Both readings, A and B, see God as just, but reading A presents a theology where God takes revenge on humans violating his personal rights regarding monotheism and worship, thereby presenting an anthropology whereby humans are first and foremost defined by their faith. Reading B presents a theology wherein God takes revenge on humans violating the rights of other humans, thereby presenting an anthropology whereby humans are first and foremost defined by their ethics. In the classical period, the B reading is adopted and made the dominant interpretation representing the Sunni Orthodox, as we see with the 11th century Al-Wahidi. I will go through it fast, because we need to end up with the Ottomans.
You have to come, yes.
Yeah.
Ottoman period.
One of the things that Wahidi does here is that, first of all, he makes the B reading that people are not destroyed because of their social affairs.
Just 3 minutes.
And he also adds here, they are not destroyed when they pursue the rights in the social affairs, the mu'amala. So here, already Wahidi makes it the dominant interpretation and also emphasizes that they are only destroyed for violating things in the mu'amalat, not in the ibadat. This makes B the typological Sunni Orthodox reading and has direct consequences for reading A, as it became to be viewed as the typological reading of the Mu'tazila. That reading A and B revolved around the separation of faith and works can also be seen in another important term that Wahidi introduces, the mu'amalat. So if we then move to Zamakhshari, which also became central for the Ottoman scholars, when he was writing in the 13th century, in a sense, he included both the A and B reading, because in a sense, it was already the dominant interpretation on the Sunnis. And in a sense, he could not escape it. So he says, this is with the meaning of truth and uprightness, and the lam in li yukhlik is to confirm the denal, and bizulum is the condition of the agent. And its meaning is that it is impossible, istahal, from divine wisdom, al-hikmah, that God destroys the communities unjustly whilst people are right-doers. His essence transcends wrongdoing, and proclaim with it that he destroys right-doers due to their own wrongdoing. So that is reading A. Then he ends with reading B. And it's also said, killa. And killa is normally to provide a weaker interpretation. The wrongdoing is shirk, and its meaning is that he does not destroy the communities caused, bisabab, by the shirk of its people, while there are right doers undertaking the right is what between them. So you already see the influence of Farran here. So Zamakhshari became, ironically, the most popular tafsir in Islam, and was the prime tafsir text studied in Ottoman scholarship. Multiple commentaries, the Hawashi, reproduced to counter or downplay its Mu'tazila theology as the way to keep its popularity and central use in Sunni syllabi acceptable. Especially Ottoman exegetes will use Zamakhshari's grammar reading and his reference to divine wisdom and transcendence over injustice in service of the B reading. I will skip Zamakhshari and go directly to Baidawi. I'm almost done. And if we look at Baidawi, what Baidawi does, he is one of the first one who mixes Al-Ghazi and Zamakhshari. So he says, and your Lord doesn't destroy the communities for wrongdoing, for shirk, idolatry, and its people are right doers. So he mixes then Al-Ghazi and Zamakhshari. And this is picked up also by the Ottoman scholars. One of the first Maturidi scholars editing Zamakhshari, in a sense, what he did is that Nasafi, what I made gray over there, he just cut it out of the text. So he just, in a sense, what he did, he just cut things out of Zamakhshari that he didn't like. But if you look at how the Ottoman scholars approach this discourse, this is Ibn Tamjid. He's one of the oldest and first known Hashiyya writers on Baidawi in the 15th century. And you see that he, interesting enough, what he done in his Hashiyya, which is in yellow here, that is what he cites from Baidawi, and then he has his own discourse on it, which also shows how the Hawashi tradition not only explains the text, but also use it as headers for their own discourse. So what he says here, and his extreme mercy and liberality in his rights, which is a citation from Baidawi, means he has restricted himself, which is a very radical statement to make. Means God has restricted himself by disavowing destruction based on doing wrong to oneself, by adhering to shirk, and by guaranteeing this established condition through his statements, and its inhabitants being righteous. They being instructed that God the Exalted is merciful towards the person who is doing wrong to himself, when he's not exceeding in doing wrong to others. Doing wrong to oneself, as in adhering to shirk, belongs to the rights of the Exalted, the Hakallah, and this verse proves that the Exalted is liberal in his rights when human rights are upheld. And this is from his extreme mercy. And then Ibn Tamjid gives a supplication. O God, be merciful on us, and be extremely exceeding on us, and bestow us with guidance and success in avoiding the violation of your servants' rights. He also discusses the thing that Baidawi says at the end, a citation that Al-Razi introduced, is this afar, this political philosophical maxim that that a nation is not destroyed because of kufr, but is destroyed because of zulm or jawra, this injustice or oppression. And he explains it as Ibn Tamjid explains that maxim as such. This is because unbelief does not disregard the rights and duties towards the other. This is in contrast to injustice and disregard for the other, which is a cause for the destruction of the kingdom, and this is the meaning of rulership is not remaining with justice. If we then go to the 16th century with the Ottoman Shaykh al-Islam Ibn Kamal Pasha, we can see a more mixing of Baidawi and Zamakhshari. Yellow is Baidawi, gray is Zamakhshari, and green is Al-Razi. And one of the interesting things about this is that it also shows that they were not simply editing these tafsir. They were consciously mixing them, synthesizing them into their own discourse. I will go on. This is, I'll end with this. This is Isam ad-Din al-Qunawi, which I mentioned before, the 18th century Hashir writer on Baidawi. He ends with one of the most interesting discourses here. Wait, let me get to it. Yeah. Let's citation. We will end our assessment with the earlier mentioned Ottoman exegete al-Qunawi, who was the head of the scholars in his time, and who wrote an extensive 20-volume Hashiyah on Baidawi. He elaborates Baidawi's statement. In his Baidawi statement, because of idolatry, bil shirk, explains Zulm here as shirk because on exegesis, and that its people are right-doers. And his statement, what is between them, fi bainahum, is not between them and God, the Exalted, regarding their unbelief towards him. And his statement, and this, means the absence of destruction caused by the crime of shirk, and so long as they do not incorporate it with corruption and injustice towards other humans. And Baidawi's statement, his extreme mercy and liberality in his rights, and from this do the jurists advance human rights over the divine rights. He explains it as such, and his extreme mercy in his respite concerning his rights, or forgiveness in this matter regarding his rights, God's rights after the offense on earth, delaying the punishment to the hereafter. And this verse states that their destruction is caused by their unbelief, which was tolerated, so the shirk and kufr was tolerated all the time on earth, and which was then added when the people of the community started to add injustice and the violation of the haqq al-ibad, the violation of human rights, such as murdering. And ibadah, dutiful worship, prescribes on someone zakat, pledges, and other such matters which belong to the haqq Allah. While duties towards mankind take precedence, the haqq al-ibad take precedence in fulfillment as being duties towards creation. And this is evident within the art of fiqh. So in our analysis to the tafsir tradition, we see that it's an overarching science. Let me go to the last part. The increase of super commentaries in the post-classical period shows a redefining and how to engage the tafsir tradition in the post-15th century era. Many of the referenced super commentaries both use and respond to the central text, and the authority these have in Muslim societies as headers for their own discourse. Super commentaries on the Kashaf try to sunnify its theological positions, but the super commentaries on Baidawi use it as representative summarizations of the pre-15th century tafsir tradition in total. The latter super commentaries therefore seem to draw a line in the sand, marking a before and after in exegetical epochs. But from the 15th century onwards, we also see the rise of the Ottoman ikhtilaf literature on Ash'ari-Maturidi differences. This development within Ottoman theology directly reflects the increase in super commentaries on Baidawi, whereby Baidawi served as the Ash'ari other to which to respond to in the super commentaries from a Maturidi perspective. Just as the super commentary tradition on Zamakhshari refuted his Mu'tazila theology, so did the super commentary tradition on Baidawi by seeking a middle path. But apart from the Maturidi middle path adhered to in the Ottoman tafsir tradition, we also clearly see an expansion and maturing of both the science of tafsir and the implications of the humanistic turn taken in post-classical Sunni theology.